Welcome to the People of AI podcast, showcasing inspiring people with interesting stories in the field of artificial intelligence. I'm Ashley Oldacre. Let's jump right in. This podcast is sponsored by Google. Any remarks made by the speakers are their own and are not endorsed by Google. Hi, it's Ashley here.
Hi everyone, it's Gus.
I'm super excited to introduce our guest today, Sunita Verma. Sunita Verma is a vice president of engineering, and in that role leads engineering, product, and strategy for Google's Core Labs team. Her teams are focused on working with generative AI, large language models, blockchain, and other emergent technologies and their potential to transform Google Enterprise, Google's first-party products, and the developer ecosystem. After joining Google as an engineer in 2007, Sunita has worked on multiple areas such as shared infrastructure, payments, search ads, and has helped build ambitious roadmaps for various teams, grown the next generation of leaders, and helped build solutions for a variety of problems across Google. Sunita is passionate about diversity and inclusion. She works closely on an outreach program to help Googlers engage with college programs and remove barriers for underrepresented talent in the tech industry. Previously, she proudly led the Search Ads Academic Outreach Committee. In addition, Sunita is a longtime supporter and participant of the Women Takemakers Engineering Fellow Program and is a dedicated mentor, coach, and advisor to senior women across Google. Welcome, Sunita.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
The pleasure, a huge pleasure for us. So as we jump into the conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I have been living in the US for the past 20 years, but I was born and grew up in India, did my schooling in India, did my undergrad in India as well, and kind of came to United States for doing my master's. And it was a really, really pleasant experience for me because I like doing applied stuff, and the education system here sort of gave me ample opportunity to do that. And once I graduated from University of California, Santa Barbara, I came into the Silicon Valley and started working at different companies. I've been at Google for the past 16 plus years, and it has just been a very amazing ride.
Well, that's an incredible journey, Sunita, and I'd love to unpack that a little bit. Were you interested in tech from the beginning, or sort of what were your interests as a young person and as a young adult?
So growing up in my teenage years, high school, I was very interested in biology. And that was one subject that I really loved a lot. And I always wanted to be an engineer. And I realized I actually wanted to be a genetic engineer. And
Wow.
genetic engineering back early 90s was not a big field. Potentially, maybe it was big in the United States, but no, not in India, definitely. And so when the time came to graduate out of high school and go into a college, both my parents and I were scratching our heads, like, what am I going to do? And I was adamant that I want to do genetic engineering, and they figured out like what were the possible options and things like that in India. And turned out there weren't that many options at that time. So they're like, this is not what probably we can afford for you to do kind of thing. So I then decided to get into engineering, regular engineering. And I think even though it was not the first thing I wanted to do, it sort of appealed to my problem solving nature. And this is obviously all hindsight for me as I reflect back on how I used to think about it at that time. So I got into regular engineering. I was still not exposed to computers till this point. In my second and third year of engineering, which is probably what junior's year here, is when I started having classes related to computer science, started taking those courses. And I was basically fascinated by problem solving aspect because it sort of opened up the world for me at that time to say, oh, wow, you can solve any kind of problem with this technology, no matter which field you are in. And that to me was mind blowing. But I think I still didn't get at least even till that time, I still didn't get enough of, let's say, both the right guidance as well as the family circumstances were such that I didn't pursue computer science as initial part of my career. So I worked for a few years in India before transitioning to United States. And as I was working, I started realizing, look, I think I'm running into sort of limitations of the work that I'm doing, and I really do need to broaden my horizons. And at that point, I decided that, along with my fiance, who's my husband now, he sort of encouraged me quite a bit, and he's encouraged and told me that you have a natural passion for this topic, so you should go into this area. So I decided to do a master's in the United States at that point, and I love every bit of what I did during my master's. So I did my master's in computer science from University of California, Santa Barbara, and the education system, the ability to apply what I was learning in a classroom environment was just amazing for me for how I learn and so on. So that's when I really got into the computers like in a really big way. And after I graduated, I obviously transitioned to working in Silicon Valley. I started working for Symantec in the computer security space, computer and network security space. And at some point, I sort of got bored with that field. Nothing sort of there's nothing wrong with that, but it sort of just didn't work for my nature. And then I decided to change jobs. And at that time, when I was looking for different opportunities, I applied towards Yahoo and Google. Somehow, Yahoo moved faster, so I ended up joining Yahoo, but realized this is not the right match for my nature. And I sort of came back to Google for interviews again, and it worked out at that time. And I joined Google in 2007. And since then, I think the scope and scale of problems that we solve and the independence and risk taking that is enabled in our environment just sort of I fell in love with that, and I sort of stayed around.
Wow.
I guess one thing that also that brought me here is to be close to this kind of technology that's not available everywhere, right? It's the Google scale bring new challenge that you can play with, you can learn with. So this is one of the things that brought me here. And here, Sunita talk about exactly this kind of thing. It's so great. And I would ask, you are here since 2007, it's a long time. How do you see the all these years, the evolution of Google itself? And I would like also to have some of your perspective into your development as a engineer, as a person here.
Yeah, definitely the company has gone through an evolution, and as any growing thing should. And most of it has been really, really good, both for the company, the employees, and the consumers or the users of our products. It was very hard engineering driven at that time, and I think that makes sense now looking back, because we were developing many foundational systems that are backbone of where what most of the products that we run today, whether it is our, let's say, search indexing and serving systems, whether it is our large scale storage systems, whether the things that exist in cloud today. So many of the systems that I saw around me are part of basically TI and cloud today. So that's one transformation that has happened, that this foundation has allowed the company to build many more products on top of it to basically serve our users. So that's one shift that I've seen, where because the lot of engineering problem at the foundational level have moved in a specific area of the company. Earlier it was a little bit more widespread. And of course, we have many more products. We have many more products that are used by users, that are solving really, really cool problems. And if I think about it, like some of these underlying systems that we built early on have enabled not only Google, but a lot of industries in the open source world or in the world outside Google. Think about MapReduce being used by the concept as a whole being used by many different people across Google, and people across the industry. And there are just so many open source Apache products outside that sort of implement the same concept that we implemented at Google. So what it has allowed us to do is build products on top of it that wouldn't have been possible otherwise, in some sense. So think product like Map. YouTube obviously is a product we bought, but then scaling that product to the level that it has today has been enabled by many of those technologies and their descendants. In terms of my own development, I moved from being an individual contributor to a leader, a technical leader, to a leader in general. And what I loved about my work is being able to, the environment at Google helped me sort of make connections between different parts of the company. across different teams. And that broadened my perspective of both problem solving and what kind of systems we should be building to solve those problems. And I think part of the success that thankfully I have had here is because of the environment that exists at Google. So,
Tell us a bit more about how that environment has encouraged that kind of success and that growth and the ability to, because you've had so many different roles as well. And you came in, I think, as an engineer
yeah.
and also have seen so many different parts of the company too.
Yes, yes. So I think there are a couple of things. One, the ability to collaborate irrespective of the boundaries of team boundaries that we had. That was amazing to me, and that was I was never satisfied with doing just what I was doing in my team, and I would always be curious to know what's happening in the teams around me. How does it connect to the work that I am doing? Is there some problem in the white space between our teams that is not being solved, and how can I solve it? And that natural curiosity and ability to sort of reach across the teams is something that is encouraged, or that was encouraged and is still encouraged by the culture we have. It was much less siloed, at least at that time. And it allowed me to actually collaborate, build collaborations, talk to people, start projects that I wouldn't have been able to start if I were completely siloed within the environment of my own team. And the second thing is the mobility. So I wanted to continuously be challenged. So once I had reached a point in my existing teams where I was like, okay, I sort of know what to do now. What's next in that sense? So the mobility allowed me to move to another part of the company without necessarily having the background in that area. And those are the kind of moves, at least early on in my career, I was making without really thinking about it. But later on, I became much more thoughtful about making those moves. And it served two purposes. One, it helped me sort of keep satisfy this desire of being challenged, going into a new area, being able to learn a new area and bring an outsider's perspective to that area. I think actually it definitely helped quite a bit, not just me, but also the projects that I went to, because I brought a perspective of a fresher or a noogler, you can say that, and I was able to ask questions like, why this way and why not this way? And I've sort of taken a lesson from this particular part that, it's important to bring different perspectives, even in any of the projects that we are working on. And the second thing it helped me with is it got me exposure to different parts of the company and different people across the company. So even in teams that I left behind, I have friends. Even in the new teams that I have obviously colleagues who became friends. So it just helped build a network that is, I would say, helping me till today as well.
It sounds to me like Google originally started sort of with one project, but then didn't I hear something about like Gmail was actually a tool that
Yep.
was built internally,
Yes.
used internally to solve that problem. And then it became so popular that then we made it available externally. And so I feel like this culture of of figuring out, oh, what does this team need? What does my team have to offer? Has infused the culture of Google to allow to solve problems and build things that solve our own problems, which then end up being also problems that a lot of other people have. And that's what has allowed Google, I think, to scale and also to delight users with, the various products that we have.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see, to hear your story about how you were a part of that and how you, in this sense, benefited, but also enabled that.
Yeah.
I could stay here all day listening just to that.
Same.
The journey for me would be, I would stay here asking questions, no stop. I'm very happy to be able to ask a few questions. Can you also share a little bit about how was your journey going to ads? Because it's, I guess most of you know that ads is important to Google.
Yes, definitely. So maybe a little bit before ads is, even when I was working on distributed systems, one problem I was trying to solve for is how to isolate the workloads in these large shared services like Bigtable, GFS, and so on, because as these workloads were interacting with each other, they would cause, let's say, problems, and that would cause pager to go off. And I was one of the persons who used to handle the pager along with obviously other engineers. So I was trying to solve a problem for myself at one time. And one thing I realizes we probably need to start collecting a lot of data in order to understand how these different workloads, what parts of the shared service these different workloads are stressing or exercising. And when we collected the data, one of the things I also thought about is like, okay, now how do I make sense of all this data? I started hearing about machine learning at that time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use the data and pass it through some regression classifiers. Of course, the first results were not good at all because we realized there were key pieces of data that were missing.
When was that? Around when?
This was 2009, 2010.
Wow.
Yeah. And I basically said, I think there is something here, but I'm just not able to get to it. There is something here. So I actually started reading about machine learning on my own. And I also started taking classes in order to build my understanding of the space. And then I realized that I really need to apply this knowledge. It goes back to the theme that I have had even during my college. I really need to apply these things in order to sort of feel excited and in order to see the impact.
And
I
and problem solve.
problem solve, exactly. So I deliberately started moving to teams or parts of the company where I would have to solve problems leveraging this technology. So I left that it was called storage solutions at that storage systems at that time is now TI/cloud. I left that team. I went to Google Plus for a while, led the people recommendation team there, learned a ton more about the machine learning space. And then I moved to Google Payments and applied machine learning to solve the challenge of fraud in digital transactions. And I think some of the leaders at the company, Shiv Venkatraman being one of them, they saw the potential of the technology being applied to solve the problems in a more innovative way, in a more unique way that I had done. And I think that was the reason, one of the reasons why they said, why don't you move to ads? So one of the things that I basically said when I wanted to move to ads was I'm going to take on at least one area that I'm not familiar with, and that was ads auctions. And I didn't have any background in auctions, at least at that time.
What is that, real quick? What's
Auctions. So auction is the final place where we bring together different advertisers. The system decides basically in what order to show the ads and what price we'll charge for those ads and things like that. So there was some hesitation on part of a lot of people at that time to say, oh, we're going to give auctions to someone who doesn't know anything about auctions.
Mm-hmm.
And my sort of pitch was that bringing someone from the space, as long as there are enough technical leaders in the organization, bringing someone from an area someone who doesn't have background in the area might bring fresh eyes, might bring a fresh perspective into the space. And I think I was convincing enough that people gave me that role. And I joined ads at Google.
What year was this?
This was 2017.
Wow.
So, and then I gradually ended up taking more and more responsibilities, eventually becoming responsible for all of our ads quality for search and shopping ads business. And I was also running the ads ML infrastructure and AI portions for all of our ads businesses. So I had pretty big remit at that time, and happy about the fact that and a big part of the credit goes to the teams that I ended up working with. They're just amazing, amazing people in all parts of Google and especially ads. I ended up working with really great people, and we ended up doing some groundbreaking changes to systems that had been running for 15 plus years, and ended up launching new products, leveraging AI, which was not called AI at that time. So leveraging BERT
What was it
models.
called?
So there is a product called Responsive Search Ads that Google launched, and that came from me and my teams, and it eventually ended up becoming a product that got called out multiple times on the earnings calls as well. And the idea there was to leverage our expertise in AI and ML to take away pain points from advertiser of having to give us lines of content and different variations of that content in order to run ads. And our value proposition was that we can combine this content into different combinations, and we can figure out what combinations will work best based on the knowledge that we have and by applying the technology that we have in-house at Google. So it was definitely a very sort of good period of my career.
How this is a little bit petty. So people were afraid of giving that to you because you didn't have the expertise. Did you get feedback later of like, yeah, I guess you were right?
So I we did run into a lot of opposition, maybe not, that's not the right word, but just there's just a lot of skepticism even within the company, or even within the org, I would say, for multiple reasons. One, our systems were not built to take pieces of content. They always expected fully formed ad, and that's how the whole flow was set up. And they're like, okay, you'll have to change the whole flow. We don't know what will happen. So we said, okay, we'll deal with it. We'll run small experiments and we'll figure out that we'll make sure we are doing the right thing. But I think the bigger thing was the ecosystem was set up in a way where advertisers were also not prepared to give pieces of content because they were used to seeing the fully formed ad as they are submitting it into our system. And they're like, okay, I won't be able to see the fully formed ad till you are ready to serve it, which is different from the workflows that they are used to. So there was just, and I would say credit to a lot of product management and the GPL teams that worked with us, and the sales teams that worked with us to basically make sure we do the right thing for the ecosystem as well.
And did you face any like personal challenges in sort of convincing? I would love to, I think that's probably what you were getting at, Gus, too, is I can imagine you coming into a space and you don't have the quote unquote like perfect resume for the job. So how do you build up that trust? How do you build up that sort of that reputation? Were you ever met with challenges? Because, you know, for our listeners, I'm sure many people are in that situation where they want to jump into AI and they don't have the credentials. And so how do you go into a new space? How do you, first of all, get someone to give you a chance? And second of all, how do you go about proving yourself in that environment?
There are a couple of things, and I did not have the perfect resume, as you mentioned, for ads. I think the first thing you have to be able to do is go with an open mind and be very deliberate about telling people, look, I'm here to learn. I don't have the knowledge that you have had by virtue of working in this field for whatever n number of years, but I'm here to learn, and hopefully I bring some value to by being an outsider. And I made that very, very clear to everybody. Look, I am not saying that I know the best. I know you guys know the domain very well, but I really think there is an opportunity for us as a company, and let's work together on this.
And how was that received by the teams?
So, my teams also were a little divided at that time because it's less about opposition to me or anything like that. It's more about, can I trust this person?
Right.
Can I trust their judgment? Can I trust their leadership? Will they be able to deliver on this potentially a risk we are taking? And of course, different motivations are involved from the team side. Okay, maybe somebody has a motivation of a promotion or something like that. What if the project doesn't go anywhere and it basically doesn't pan out? And I think this is where having support or mandate from the senior leadership in ads helped quite a bit, because there were people who were basically saying, this is not something our advertisers won't agree to, something very radical. I don't think we should be doing these kind of things. And I think this is where support from a lot of senior leaders helps. Like, experimenting is not the bad thing. Like, experimentation is what moves us forward. So initially, we basically said we'll run it as an experiment. We'll run it as a small experiment on the advertiser side as well. And based on the results, we'll basically decide whether to move forward or whether to shut it down. So,
but how did you get the leaders to believe in you and to support you on this?
So I think a couple of things. One, there is an argument to be made for thoughtful risk taking. So I made those arguments for thoughtful risk taking. I basically knew the technology side, and I also had this good fortune of people from Google Research who I have worked with for a long time being really good supporters and mentors. And they're like, if you want to build something like that, we can help you build a prototype really quickly. We have the technology on the bird side. And there are a couple of engineers on my team who are very excited to build a prototype that we could use to demonstrate what it could look like. And so I think some of those things I learned over a period of time building a prototype actually helps quite a bit in removing a lot of roadblocks, because a lot of times people find it really hard to visualize, and that prototypes enables you to visualize what it could look like. So I think that was the sort of thing that got us over the hump of saying basically, okay, we can run an experiment. And thoughtful risk taking, especially in an area like ads or any other area of our business, not only showing the potential but also showing how you are going to mitigate the risks that exist, that potentially exist with something really radical, is very, very important.
I'm feeling already a better engineer just by listening to this. So
I feel
You're
like a
being
better
kind.
employee as well.
Yeah.
And I love the story because it shows that you touched on different things, right? You had sort of proof of a concept with the prototyping. You had proof of really good work, even if it wasn't in the field. And you had mentors and supporters who could advocate for you.
Yes.
And so combining those things is, I think, what allowed you to move forward with this project. And I also loved how you came at your teams with this sense of, hey, I don't know, and I'm actually depending on you, or I want to learn from you to tell me. And I think that has to do with how you've approached things and this ability to talk with other teams, solve problems, and not come at it with, I know everything, but I'm here to learn and problem solve. So there's sort of this theme.
Yeah, I've also been fortunate to have a lot of people as supporters, friends, and mentors at Google. So I'm definitely thankful to them.
could stay here just talking about this like for another hour. But I think we have to move to Gen AI labs related stuff.
I think tying in this whole theme of AI, it sounds like when you came in, AI was really sort of recommendation systems. Is that right?
Yes.
And maybe we can nerd out a little bit about that and talk about the evolution of, because AI has been around since, when you joined. So I'd love for you to talk about that. So that's my question.
Yeah, I think I would say Google has always had a foot in this space for a long, long time. And this is how I got into it at Google in 2009, 2010 kind of time frame. And given that even the large scale system field was just starting off, it's a combination of things that have happened over the last decade or so that have basically, this confluence of things have brought the field to a point where we are moving at a much faster pace and building upon what existed before. And what I mean by that is we as in general field has large scale data availability, and that has happened because all these services have existed for some time. Internet has existed for some time. Second is there is availability of compute to the scale that is needed. The third is there is availability of algorithms. People have built algorithms and systems that could basically crunch through all that data in a reasonable amount of time. Not it won't take years kind of thing. So I think multiple things have come together to bring the field to a point where the advances are just seem exponential. So earlier it was more about linear regression, logistic regression, just basic mathematical systems, and it eventually transformed into which were mainly used for recommendations. And at least Google Ads has been a place where machine learning slash AI has been used for a long, long time. Ads has been sort of at the forefront of a lot of these things from very early on. And I think the transition started happening through when people started moving forward from logistic regression and all these systems over to neural network based systems. And to me, the stories are quite a bit fascinating here because from what I understand, people were trying to model how human brain represents and processes information. And that has resulted in a lot of these architectures that we see today, and that has also enabled the field to move really, really fast. And yes, generative AI was not called generative AI back when the Bird paper came out, but the thing that Google researchers were trying to do is generative AI, and they were basically starting with how can we improve the accuracy of our language translation models. And I think it took a little bit of a stretch for somebody to realize, oh, okay, a model that can basically translate one language to another language effectively is generating content, even
Wow.
though it was just basically doing a translation. And definitely some other companies took the field even further. But I think we have the right ingredients of talent and technology on our side to sort of just deploy the generative AI part of the technology really really quickly, and we've been doing that since early this year.
And I would say that even the tech behind all of it, right? Transformers, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
research on diffusers and stuff that people like last year was crazy, right? Last year everything happened. Well, everything was publicly happening. Let's say like that. But if you look on where they came from, there's a lot of papers from Google, right? A lot of them,
Yes.
and not only the Transformers one. There were other ones I was trying to understand. For example, where Stable Diffusion Tech and DALI came from, and then we start to look and say, oh, all this was here presented the year before and the year before. They just need more scale. And you moved from ads to labs.
Uh-huh.
And what is labs?
So maybe first I'll talk about my reason for moving from ads. One, the ads teams that I had and the business that we had sort of grown was at a place where it could run without me. There's just a lot of capable people that I inherited, I hired in the team. So I think many of them are really, really amazing leaders themselves. So I felt that, I could step out and take a little bit of risk from a company point of view as well. But I think the second bigger reason for me also was I think there were these emergent technologies that I was seeing, and I really wanted us to focus on how would these technologies disrupt the current state of the world. And unless we experiment, unless we build prototypes, unless we build proof of concepts, we're not going to know. And that was sort of one of the bigger reasons for me to say, maybe I should move out of ads. So I said, if there is a part of Google where somebody is doing this as a full-time job, I want to be in that part. And so this is where Clay Bavor, who has since left Google, started labs to do exactly this in November of 2021. And he started a team, and people started moving around to that team in early 2022. I came to know about it somewhere in spring of 2022, and I'm like, okay, this is exactly what I was looking for, where this is 100% of your time. It's not a side project that you're doing. And that's when I decided to leave ads. I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going. And the set of emergent technologies that core labs part of it works with are generative AI. And one other emergent technology is blockchain. Of course, you won't think about it in the same way because of the hype just has died down in the ecosystem. But it, at least for me in the blockchain space, for me, it's less about crypto as in crypto tokens. It's more about just the underlying technology and what potential it has to transform some of the problems that either have been solved in a different way or haven't been solved before. So that's the sort of lens we are taking in our team, both with generative AI and with the blockchain technology, of how to rethink the solution for certain large-scale problems in a very different way. So that's what we do in Core Labs.
So labs is like a prototyping playground, kind of. How is that different from research?
So research is going in a more after a little bit more fundamental things, understanding how let's say AI technology works fundamentally, thinking about different model architectures, thinking about different optimization scheme algorithms and so on. But how does it get applied into a product or a problem solving space is what we do. So we do, one of the things we are trying to do is to accelerate the sort of the reaching or showcasing research technologies over to the world in form of products. Because think about it, for our customers, whether it is our consumer customers, enterprise customers, or developers, how do they get their hands on something that is in research? It has to go through a phase of either prototype building or some kind of proof of concepts that can be then put out for them to play around with.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Well, I guess, Rita, in terms of you Bean Labs. I'd like to understand your perspective on how Gen AI will impact even more the planet, the workforce, the way we do things. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So even before I go into the exact, let's say, potential transformations that might happen, I think the way to think about it is step back a little bit and see what the technology enables. And for me, the biggest learning was that ability to interact with these systems in natural language, being able to tell the system or write for the system what you want it to do, basically opens it up to everyone. It just explores the accessibility side of it.
How was it for you when you found out that capability? Because for me, it was like, what? Can you do that?
Yes, it was a big aha moment for me as well. And one thing I've learned over a period of time is we engineers, and I'm an engineer too. A lot of times when we build systems, we think from an engineer's point of view, and this is what I was seeing in the AI ML world, where people were talking when you're talking to, let's say, consumers, which could be, your friends, your relatives, anybody, you'll be talking about. At least this is how I saw a lot of people talking about. Oh my God, this model has n parameters, n billion, n trillion parameters, and to an ordinary user, it's like I don't care. Um, but when you talk about the AI technology, hey, you as a person can interact with it, that just opens up a world of possibilities for them. It's like, okay, now I can use it. I couldn't comprehend that n trillion parameter model or whatever, but I know how to speak, I know the language aspect of it, and I know how I can interact with this system. And that has really exploded the usage of the technology by regular consumers. And that to me is just fantastic. The second part of the technology that I really, really love is being able to create things. Like creation is something that we said, okay, we human beings can do. We create art, books, movies, whatever. And now this technology comes along and says, yeah, we can create, it can create. And that also has amazing sort of implications for, again, consumers. It basically, especially if you think about the creator ecosystem, it makes many more people be able to express themselves, be able to express their creativity through language. So those are the two sort of very interesting parts of me for me about this technology. And in the early on phases, and we talk about as if it's just a long time ago, it hasn't been that long, but in the early phases, I think it's the creativity aspect that was getting a lot of attention. But one of the things that this technology also will transform is how people work. And think about all the functions where language, either spoken or written word, is used quite a bit, and how much content gets generated within an enterprise, and how much of that are we able to use or make sense of even in our roles. Like I ask my engineers, like we are all engineers, so many documents, technical design documents are getting written every day, and many of them, out of that, a big subset of them are relevant for us. How many of them you know about? How many of them do you have time to read, parse, understand, interpret? No, none of us can do it. This imbalance between amount of content that exists and our ability to parse and make use of that content is going to get solved by this technology quite a bit. So think about areas of work like, I don't know, finance, legal, HR, where there's just a lot of or policies that get generated in an enterprise environment. How many of our policies are we able to comprehend in a short amount of time? So I think just having capabilities, even in an enterprise environment, of deploying this technology in a way that makes each of us much more productive is going to be the thing. I mean, we are already seeing coding assistants outside, and coding assistants are making people, I don't know, I've heard numbers of 25x more productive and things like that. So I think there's just huge, huge potential for them to make a significant impact in the enterprise environment.
So first of all, thank you very much for that. I also agree with you that this tech will enable us to do our jobs better
Mhm.
because, for example, the coding thing you said, like, oh, everyone can code. Kind of, right? You can use to help you when you know what you're doing. Because when you don't know, it will throw you a lot of stuff that you cannot judge how good or bad it is.
Yep.
I start one day talking to one of these models, hey, write this function for me. And then it wrote and I tried to use without thinking much. And then all of a sudden I said, yeah, this is wrong. All of it is wrong. And then you start iterating on something wrong and never gets right. So when you know what you're doing, it gives you superpowers. Otherwise, it helps, but doesn't replace like a professional, I would say.
I still have belief in human beings being the most creative set of people. And at least in my mind, these machines are one advantage these systems have is they're able to sort of look at all this information at one time, which we can't. And we should basically use them to both help us and to augment our own capabilities. And I think that that's the way we would, at least I would like to think we would build them.
And that's the evolution of technology, really. I mean, calculators, computers. I mean, we've been developing tools that assist us.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm terrible at math, but that I don't think if I had learned it versus using a calculator, I mean, it wouldn't have changed. So I think the evolution of this it's really, I mean, looking at it as a tool more than anything else. Would you both agree?
Yep.
Oh, definitely. And having Sunita's opinion, someone that's working on this on one of the most advanced places possible, I'm happy that we have similar understanding. And do you think any other impacts you foresee in the next, I don't know, 5 years? 10 is too much, but 5.
10 is a long time in technology. I don't think anybody can predict, at least I don't claim to predict I don't think I can predict the 5-year part as well. But I think just because part of our role in labs is to look around the corners, one part aspect of life that is going to get significantly transformed is the enterprise or the work environment. But I think our consumer environment is also going to see lot of changes in a good way, in terms of how we find information, how we interact with information, how we present our own information on in an area like open web is also going to significantly transform. The other area you can think about is just a creator ecosystem. A lot of people have already made the use of this technology in creating stuff. And yes, we end up creating new things, and there is the sort of the risk management side of the technology as well that I would be remiss if I don't talk about, which is misinformation, potential for misinformation with this kind of technology. And of course, Google and many teams at Google are thinking through that as well.
So you are now in this new team and you're in this playground where you're able to prototype. Is there, with keeping in within your theme of problem solving, what problem are you really excited to be solving right now? Or are there many that you're going to be hopefully able to prototype in labs?
So there are actually many, and we hope to be able to showcase some of them as they mature a little bit more. But I can just talk about the broader themes that we are looking at. Obviously, we talked about how work will get transformed. So we are imagining how work will get transformed with this technology. And we are making some bets in that space, basically, on how to think about that. And this is where I was talking about basically if I really want to understand what is a fundamental transformation that is being brought about this technology, which is language and creation capability. So I think if you look at what functions in an enterprise make heavy use of language and how to make those functions more effective is one sort of lens we are taking on the enterprise side. The second thing we are saying is even the creators are going to see a lot of transformation. And one of the things they're going to wrestle with a little bit is just a proliferation of all sorts of APIs from different providers. And how are they going to sort of wrap their arms around this? How are they going to be able to reduce the amount of burden that they currently carry in terms of For example, in order to produce an hour of content, production grade content, sometimes they have to do 25 hours, 30 hours worth of, roles in order to finally distill it down to an hour. So how can we make that process really, really easy, leveraging some of these technologies? So that's the second sort of area that we are looking at. And the third is the emergent area that we talked about in blockchain space. We have some really cool things we are working on that I can't talk all about, but I hope to be able to showcase a lot of the work from our team in due course.
Very excited. Very excited.
I could stay here for another hour. As I said, I guess the only solution is to move to Sunita's team. Don't tell Lawrence.
Yes, please.
And I would like to ask you a question about what advice would you give to a young, I wouldn't say even developer, but someone interested in tech, interested in seeing all these happen. I've seen, I see the hype, and I see this hype pushing people away because I saw people say, I'm not going to do computer science. The ML thing will do everything. I don't need to be there, which is wrong, right? But people selling this hype give this bad impression and push away people that would be able to help us later, right? So I would prefer to, instead of going after this hype, listen to someone like you that has a lot of experience. I would like some kind of, what insights could you share with these young people seeing the field right now?
Yes, and first thing I would say is don't be daunted by the hype. And I think it's easier said than done, especially when you're a young person. It's much harder to sort of go beyond that hype. But one good thing that many of you have going for you in that area is there's just a lot of information available freely online, including educational material that is available. Leverage YouTube. YouTube is your friend if you want to learn something new. Start with something small. There are a lot of tools and APIs available from both Google and open source to leverage those tools, build something, solve a problem, just build something small to start with, to just, get your feet wet, get your hands dirty a little bit, and leverage all the documentation for those APIs and YouTube to go behind the scenes of these systems. There's just tons of tutorial content available on all these channels. And once you build something, it basically gives you confidence that you can do it. Even though you may or may not have the background in the field, you'll be able to build. And what I sort of hypothesize will happen with these technologies, people who have an understanding of the problem, people who have an understanding of the domain, over a period of time, there'll be enough tools that they'll be able to build solutions for themselves. So don't get daunted by what you hear in terms of hype. There's just a lot of potential in the field to bring new talent in from diverse perspectives.
Well, thank you, Sunita. What an incredible conversation. And thank you so much for your time. And wasn't this fun, Gus? This was such an incredible conversation.
I had a blast. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, both you, Gus, and Ashley. Thank you so much.
If you would like to learn more about our conversation or our guests, check out the links below. Please subscribe, and if you're feeling extra generous, give us a 5-star rating. We would love to hear from you, so leave us a comment. We'll read every one. Until next time, thank you for listening.